So, unfortunately for y'all, I'm going to open this with a little humor, hopefully. My wife and my kids have informed me that I've now reached the age where I tell bad dad jokes. So I apologize for that. But I wanted to say that it's so important for us to be at Sunday school. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. But Sunday school is where we come together and we're able to extract portions of God's Word and to study it and kind of break it down and talk about it amongst ourselves. And I feel like that's where you really learn about the Bible and things in the Bible. So with that in mind, there's a little boy, and the way I heard this, his name was Johnny, but I'm going to spare Johnny that, and I'm going to just call him Tommy. Tommy is a good little boy, okay? This is a little boy who loves to go to church. He loves Sunday school. In fact, he is usually the first one in Sunday school. And the teacher knows this. Well, one Sunday, Johnny shows up kind of late for Sunday school, and she's concerned, and once he finally gets there, she pulls him aside, and she says, Tommy, sorry, I did it to you anyway. Tommy, is everything okay? You were late today. I noticed that you were late. And she said, oh, yes, ma'am, everything's just fine. It's just that when I woke up this morning, I got ready, and I was going to go fishing. But my dad told me, he said, no, you need to go ahead and go to Sunday school. You shouldn't go fishing today. And so the teacher was kind of impressed by this, and so she said, well, Tommy, did he explain to you why it's so important for you to go to Sunday school? And he said, yes, ma'am. He told me he only had enough bait for one person. So anyway, bad dad joke, but I had to give it to you. So today, like I said, I want to talk in the time. I've got about 6 or 7 pages of notes, but don't worry, they're in bold print, so there's not that many on there each page. But I don't expect to get through all these notes, and that's just fine. I mean, the more we discuss, and if you've got things that people that want to talk, again, I feel like I'm teaching the teachers, but we're going to go for it. And I'm going to talk about faith, and that's a big bite for somebody to try to bite off for one class in 45 minutes. But specifically, I want to talk about the idea and the fact that, and the theme of this class would be that faith without works is dead, okay? And if you want to, I guess the scriptures that kind of I'm basing this out of would be found in James chapter 2. In James chapter 2, verses 14. And I'll just go ahead and read that. And there's about 3 verses. I don't have one verse, but there's about 3 verses here. So James chapter 2, verses 14, and I'll read from the New King James Version. It says, what does it profit, my brethren, if someone has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? And if you'll read on down into the chapter to verses 19 and through 20, and let me get there. You believe that there is one God? You do well. Even the demons believe and tremble. But do you want to know, O foolish man, that faith without works is dead? That's a question in my Bible there. And then finally on down in verse 26, for as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead. So just to kind of break the ice here, I mean, what that tells me, those 3 verses, is that our faith is not something that we need to gain or possess and then put it up on a shelf, okay? Because it's not going to do anybody any good, including yourself, if you have it, but you don't use it, right? And you just stick it up on a shelf and it starts to collect dust. It doesn't get any bigger. It doesn't get any smaller. It's just kind of there. It doesn't do anything. That's kind of what I get from those few verses there. So let me ask you a question. What is faith? And somebody in here is already thinking about Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, right? But what is faith? I just wrote these. Most of this just comes from my mind, me thinking about this. So, to me, faith is something that you have, right? Faith can be something that you believe in. People ask you, or you've been asked this question, or you may hear people talk about it. What faith do you belong to? You've heard that before, right? Are you Catholic? Are you Jewish? Are you Muslim? Are you whatever? What is your faith? So, this could be something you believe in. Do you have to be a Christian to have faith in something? No, right? There's Christian faith, and then there's just plain old faith. In fact, I had a lot of faith in Bubba Galloway yesterday because we took a 2-hour boat ride from Dauphin Island to Pensacola, and when we came back, it was about 5-foot seas. And then 10 miles out, I could see Dauphin Island, and I had faith he was going to get us there. At times, my faith was shaken, though. I'm not going to lie to you. But you can also be said, you can be faithful, right? You can be a faithful person. You can lack faith, or you can have a strong faith. So those are some characteristics of faith that we can all possess. But what is faith? Somebody tell me, not Hebrews 11:1 faith, but tell me, what is faith to you? Just shoot. Okay. All right. I agree with that. That's good. Go ahead. Was you going to say? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Were you going to say something else? No. Anybody else? Okay. Yes. Okay, good, because that's you're hitting on exactly where I'm going with that, Scott. Anybody else? What is faith to you? What does faith mean to you? Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's go ahead and just say faith. Let's do Hebrews 11, chapter 1. I mean, I could ask us all to say it together, but faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, right? To me, and listen, in preparing for this class, I looked at Merriam-Webster, I looked at the Encyclopedia Britannica, I looked at Wikipedia, I looked everywhere and to try to find what is the definition of faith. I mean, if we all have it, we need to know what it is that we have, right? There's no better definition than Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. I mean, I kept coming back to it. I kept coming back to it. There's a reason why it's in the Bible, and it's a reason why every one of us, without even turning to it, can quote it, okay? But I did find some things I could pull out of some of the Google searches and things like that. But faith is the opposite of doubt, right? It's like Johnny was just saying. You can't have faith and doubt at the same time. Faith is complete trust. I didn't have complete trust in Bubba yesterday, but we made it. Faith is reliance or devotion, okay? So if you can put all those things together and kind of marry them up with Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, that's kind of how I define faith. And so just a second ago I said, do you have to be a Christian to have faith? And like just about everybody here said, no, not necessarily. And I agree with that. I mean, it's not a Christian faith that we're talking about, but I have a few examples of people who had faith, and whether these people were Christians or not, I have no idea. I can't find anything that says they are, but they had a faith, okay? And some of these people you know, and some of these people maybe you don't know, and I'm talking to you about some new things. But does anybody know who Louis Braille was? Now, when I tell you about these people, I want you to keep in the back of your mind the whole time Hebrews 11, verse 1. The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So Louis Braille, just by his name, you may already figure out. Louis Braille is the guy who came up with the concept of the Braille manuscript for blind people. Okay, already he's Hebrews 11:1, right? He can't see. He was blind by the age of 3. And he attended the National Institute for Blind Children in Paris, and he invented this concept of the Braille manuscript. And there was another guy who came along later and was able to actually put it on paper, but this was his idea. I think there's about 63 or 64 characters in here that this guy who can't see at the age of 3, he came up with the concept. Everybody in here knows this because most of you, if you're from Alabama, you took Alabama history, you know who Helen Keller is, right? From Tuscumbia, Alabama. Now, she was deaf and blind. Remember Hebrews 11:1, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. This poor girl, at the age of 19, got sick, and probably most people speculate it was probably some sort of meningitis that affected her nervous system, kind of knocked out her vision and her hearing, which is very common with that when you get sick with that. And at the age of 19 months old, she was deaf and blind. Now, anybody remember anything from when you were 19 months old? I can't remember anything that far back. I mean, I don't remember hearing anything or seeing anything or anything that I did specifically. But the rest of her life was based on, I guess, what she learned about her environment, her surroundings in 19 months of life. But she went on to graduate from Radcliffe College. She became the author of about 14 books, and she wrote hundreds of speeches and essays. And this is all while, now she had help, but this is all a girl who was blind and deaf from the time she was a baby, okay? Anyone know this guy? If I said Beethoven, you got it. If I said Ludwig, nobody knows him by his first name, right? But Ludwig van Beethoven lost his hearing at an early age. He was a young man when he lost his hearing, but mainly he suffered from tinnitus, which is another fancy word for ringing of the ears. And I don't know if you've ever had ringing of the ears or dizziness or vertigo or something. It's enough to make you want to go it'll make you crazy, right? Well, it made him so crazy that he actually penned a letter, I think, to one of his brothers or one of his relatives, and it was a suicide note. He was going to end it. He couldn't take it anymore. He didn't feel like he was able to write his music, perform like he wanted to, and he was just, that his music was his life, and he was going to end it. But he didn't do it, and luckily so, because he went on in his life to perform music and to write several musical pieces. And then there's these guys. I think they've done a movie about this. We've all watched it. Apollo 13 astronauts. Now imagine this. In April 11th of 1970, these guys, I always think about astronauts. You got to be a little insane to do that, because really you're just sitting on a out of this world sized bottle rocket, and an explosion sends you into outer space, and you have to depend on the people to get that right. So they get launched into space to be the third trip to the moon, and only 2 days in they have an oxygen tank that goes bad, okay? And basically, this cell phone that everybody has with them right now has more technology on it than they had to get themselves back to Earth. But they were able to do it. What do all these people have in common? They have faith, okay? Now, like I said, I don't know if they were Christians. I don't know if any of them, if I'm in that rocket, I'm praying the entire way back to Earth. I don't know about y'all. I don't know if any of them said a prayer. But all of these people had faith, okay? They had faith in what they had experienced in their life. They built the rest of their lives on what they could remember, what they could see. When they could hear and see, they based this off, the rest of their life off of this. I have to think that these astronauts had faith not only in the engineers and the people that were working to get them back to Earth safely, but I think they also had faith in their training, because you don't just get to go up in a rocket every day unless you're trained. So I think everyone that walks this earth has to have faith in something or someone. Would y'all agree? Okay. Now I'm going to stop right there. Does anybody want to add anything to that? I don't want to do all the talking. I have to do all the talking on Wednesday night when I teach the college class. Ain't that right? College kids that are in here. You ever taught a college class? This is what you get a lot. And then they'll give you this. And then when you ask them to read, they're just like, I don't know how to read. I'm like, you're in college. Okay. Anybody want to add anything to that? So this is just examples of people. I don't know if any of these people were Christians or not, but it's just me trying to lay down an example of that. Everyone has faith in something. Okay? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. This is my monologue, okay? This leads me to the theme of our lesson today. Faith without works is dead. I believe that as Christians, we must have an act of faith. Scott said it's a verb, okay? I think faith is something you have got to put to work. One that does not make us, now this is a term I think I may have coined. If I did, I want to put a patent on it. Christians by name only. Does that make, let me say it again, a Christian by name only. What does that mean? Somebody just say, yes, Brother Jimmy, what did you say? No action, okay? You're just a Christian. Yeah, I'm a Christian. Well, if I don't know you, how do I know? If all I do is see you, I just see your face, but I don't see you do anything. That doesn't mean you're not doing anything, but I'm saying Christian by name alone. And I think that's what happens if we have faith without works. We need to have a faith that learns from our past. That everybody learns. That's where we get wisdom from, is from your past. But you don't dwell on it. You're not going to dwell on your past, because if you dwell on your shortcomings and your failings in life and the trials and things in life, it's going to be really hard to build your faith to move forward, okay? Any of the people that I just talked about, the examples I gave you, they could have given up on life. As soon as they couldn't see anymore, as soon as Beethoven couldn't hear anymore, as soon as that oxygen tank exploded or whatever on Apollo 13, they could have given up, okay? And that could have been the end of everything. All right, they could have sat in self-pity, I guess. But our faith must be one that is shown by our works. It is by our works that our faith is brought to light. Our faith must be forward-reaching, allowing us to press on to our heavenly reward. I'm going to ask a question here, and we'll just I want somebody to answer me. How are faith and works related to each other? How are they related? Okay. Absolutely, and I have a whole section toward you just nailed it that I want to talk about on that. I can tell you this, and Ashley, she's probably going to laugh, and she knows this better than anybody. There's been a lot of things in this that you see and around my house, and things that I'm like, that's broke, but I can fix it. I think I can fix it. But the problem is I don't have a lot of faith that I can fix it, but I'll try. And I think that we have to have a lot of faith. I mean, I will try to fix anything. I don't have a lot of faith that I'm going to be able to do it, but I'm going to try to do something. Okay, I'm not a kind that as a last resort I'll call somebody and say I can't fix this. I have faith that you can. Yes, Scott. Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. Right. Yeah. And that can't be done if you put it on the shelf, right? Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's right. 100%. Okay. It's almost, and I may be getting ahead of myself a little bit. It's like, Terry has said this before, and you've heard people. I mean, faith is like a muscle. Okay. If you want the muscle to grow and you want your biceps to be bigger or whatever, I mean, you got to put it to work. It's not going to do anything just sitting aside. Who else? Yes, sir, brother Murphy. Okay, could not agree more. Absolutely. All right. Okay, I love that. I love that. That's one of those you can stick up here and it'll come back and help you one day. I'm going to pull this thing right off my head. Yes, ma'am. I think absolutely. Expand on that a little bit there. I think and this may be what you're saying, I think that everything that we have comes, even our faith comes from God, right? And I mean, so everyone is given. Okay. You said that man's faith and God's faith are two different things? Mm-hmm. Fix it, Johnny. No, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Look, there's the faith that God has. We're not at that level. We can never be at that level. How can God? He is a. That's right. I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, how we could never have the faith that God had. He had enough to send His Son to earth. I mean, that's the kind of God we're talking about. He's a faithful God. He's never wavering, like you just said. So, I mean, I think we all need to strive to have that kind of faith. I don't think you can accomplish that. And but maybe I'm wrong. But I think that is that is something that we have to strive for. But I do believe, just like you're saying, I think that faith comes from God, and we're all given faith, and it's up to us how we use it and how we grow it. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. Mhm. Yes. That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. You see what I'm saying about teaching the teachers? Because that's like 2 pages. That's a page of my notes right there. Brother Dixon just nailed it. So, and I appreciate that. We're going to touch it. Again, yes, yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. No. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's wonderful when somebody shows you how something works, and then you see it yourself, and you can put that to work and get the result that you've been taught your whole life. It just solidifies it, and it makes you. So, I mean, thank you. I think that's a great way of looking at it. All right, let's go. Let's turn. I got a couple more verses here. Let's see, James chapter 2, verse 14. Somebody gets it, just go ahead and read it. And we've already said this one once, but we're going to read it again. James chapter 2, verse 14. Okay? Boy, you could do a whole class on that verse right there, and we don't have time. Can briefly, can faith alone get you into heaven? Okay. Okay. Can you get out of the starter's block without faith? I don't think you can get out of the starter block being a Christian if you don't have faith. But I think there's, like Scott's saying, that's maybe step one. You've got to go further, and it's your faith that will help you to grow as a Christian and get you to where you need to be. Yeah, Johnny. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. God demands action. Yes. Okay. All right. Then so somebody look, if you will, go down a little further to James chapter 2, verse 18. I love this verse for some reason. It's well written, and I like reading it for some reason. Somebody read it for me. Okay. Okay, it's almost it's almost poetic the way it's written there. But I mean, do we all understand what he's saying? That some people are going to say, I have faith, and someone will say, I have works. Well, this is James saying, well, show me your faith without doing anything, and I'll show you my faith. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to talk to you about how much faith I have. I'm going to show you how much faith I have by what I do. And to me, that is just You can't talk about faith without putting that verse in there. As far as I'm concerned, I mean that's strong. Okay, this guy's, because we all have known people who love to talk a big talk or talk a big fight, but when it comes time to get the job done, I mean, you're like, where are they, or whatever. You know, they're not. But James is saying, listen, you can talk to me all day about how much faith you have and blah blah blah. But I'm going to show you how much faith I have by what you see me do and how I live my life and how I go about my life. Okay? And I love that verse. And I think maybe the reason I love it so much is when I do the Bible app and I listen to the guy read it, the way he reads is just awesome. I'd have to let you hear it, but I just would like, okay, that's just a great verse. Okay. Anybody got any comments about that? Verse 20, you said? Okay. Right. I mean, okay. It's almost, James is saying, it's almost foolish to be a person that thinks you can have faith without doing something with it. There you go. Okay. That's right. Absolutely. Anybody else? Yes, sir. I think you probably can. If not, I think she could probably get it for you. Yes. Yes. Yep. Absolutely. And this is why I miss this man in my Wednesday night class so much. No, you're exactly right. One example I didn't include, I was doing some reading. They use the same example you did. They use a chair, you know. I mean, we all believe that this is a chair, and we all believe that you're supposed to sit in the chair. But until you sit yourself in that chair and it holds you up, you're not sure. Okay, the chair's got to prove something to you. Okay, so thank you. I mean, that's a great example. All right, anybody else before we move on down? All right, who wants to read for me, staying in James chapter 2, verse 26? James chapter 2, verses 26. Absolutely. If you don't take care of your body, if you don't try to get some sleep, eat some halfway decent, nourishing food for you, get a little exercise, things like that, what happens to the body? Now, we can't do anything about time, right? But what happens to the body? It starts to break down, right? I mean, if you don't keep yourself in some sort of shape, you can't go and do the things you want to do. We all have bodies, so we all know what he's talking about here. And it's another example. You know, if you treat your faith that way, you can only expect the same result. Okay? Anybody got any comments about that? Does anybody know how to keep yourself in shape without doing exercise? Please let me know. I don't think it happens. There's no amount of Crestor or anything you can take that can do that. You got to take care of your body. Okay? All right. I like to think of, now this is a little bit of a stretch, but I thought it was good. I like to think of faith without works as food without flavor. Anybody in here like to, I know y'all can all cook because I've eaten the food up here. Does anybody like to have food without flavor? I don't. Technically it's food, but without flavor it isn't good. Job chapter 6 verse 6. Can flavorless food be eaten without salt? Or is there any taste in the white of an egg? To me that is faith without works. It's food without flavor. Okay? Yes, it looks like food and you may be hungry and eat it, but it's not going to be very satisfying. Okay? All right. Any comments? How am we doing on time? I got about, y'all, is it 10 o'clock when we stop? Okay, so y'all going to have to do some more talking. Somebody said 10:03? Oh, okay. Ashley. Okay. Selfishly. selflessly. You don't do it selfishly. Yes. And I think that if you have faith and you're aware that you're wanting to do something that's going to build your faith in it, I think that if you have the kind of faith that you're talking about, that those good works are just going to ooze out of you. They're going to just you're not doing it necessarily consciously thinking about it. It's just who you are. And the more faithful you are, the more good works that, it sounds gross, that oozes out of you. And the more that happens, the more faith you have. It builds on itself. So yeah, that's a good point. And I think you do it without thinking about how well it's going to make you look. It's just who you are as a Christian. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, did everybody hear him? Because that was terrific. I mean, I agree completely with that. Yes. Yes. Yes, sir. Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree. Mm-hmm. Just as faithful, if not more, than us. Yeah, I agree 100%. And listen, I love that one about Rahab. I'm going to hit some more people here in just a second, but and she's one I didn't talk about. But that's great. I mean, that's a great point. I mean, and I didn't leave it out intentionally, but she is. I mean, Rahab was a prostitute, right? It's the last person in the world you would think would have any kind of faith that's going to help do God's will, but obviously, I mean, she did. And to your point, I mean, I think that anyone is capable, and we should assume that people are going to have that kind of faith, and they may surprise you with what they can do. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's look at some ways that a working faith in God, now I'm talking about Christian faith now, okay, can affect our lives. And we've already been talking about it. We've been all around Hebrews chapter 11, and we all know that Hebrews chapter 11 is called the Faith Hall of Fame, right? So it's a great place to go if you want to see people and examples of people who had faith. But what I want to do is I just want to say this, that I think that faith having a strong faith, a working faith, a strong working Christian faith can affect our lives in three basic ways. Number one, it can make us do things that we normally could not be able to do or would not do. Number two, it can help us overcome. And number three, it will make us want to work. And we've talked about some of this already. So if you want to, I'm going to kind of bounce around chapter 11 a little bit, so forgive me. It's just the way my brain works, and I was trying to put these things into the categories I wanted to. But so the first one is a good Christian faith, working faith, can make us do things we normally either could not do or would not be able to do. And the first person I want to talk about is Noah. And we're not going to do the whole stories because we all know these stories. But Hebrews mentions Noah in verse 11, and of course we can go back to Genesis. And at the age of 500, he spent over 100 years building this ark. The thing that gets me about it is, first of all, there's so many things that Noah had to have faith in, because if I'm 500 years old, you can have faith that I'm probably going to be looking for somewhere to sit down. I'm not going to be trying to build an ark, okay, that takes me 100 years to build. But the other thing is, they were building an ark based on something that they had never seen before. They didn't know. He did what God told him to do. He didn't ask questions. He just did it. And we've all joked about you would really hate to be his sons at this point, because I feel like they did a lot of the work. And he built it just the way God wanted to. Everything that he did in regards to that, building that ark and going through the flood, was based on his faith in God. Okay? And then we're going to drop on down to Abraham and Brother Dixon. This is where you got in my notes a little bit. But Abraham apparently liked to get up early in the morning, because it says, God told him to go to such and such place. He didn't know where he was going. He gets up not at 10 o'clock in the afternoon and kind of kicks it around the idea about going. No, he gets up and he goes. Okay, he has no idea where he's going, but he goes where God tells him to do. And it's because he has faith in God. It would be very hard. We're in the category of doing things you normally would not do. It would be very hard if somebody came up to you today and said, "Listen, we need you to pack everything you can get in the next 30 minutes, and you need to go." Okay, sounds a lot like when you were in the military, but you don't know where you're going, but they tell you pack your stuff and you're going. Okay, that's not has anything to do with faith. That has with somebody telling you what to do. But can you imagine being Abraham, just packing up your family, not knowing where you're going, and you're out of there first thing in the morning? And then there's Sarah, and we can read about her in Genesis chapter 17. At the age of 90, and Abraham's now 100 years old, they're given a son, right, named Isaac. All right? That took some faith to know that was going to happen. There's no doubt in my mind that Abraham and Sarah both had given up on having children, right? At that age, I'm not even sure if I'd have wanted to. But they had given up, I think. And then we drop on down and we talk about Moses. And Moses is in Hebrews 11, verse 27, if you want to read the little excerpt there about him. What did Moses do? You see, to me, Moses, man, you want to talk about falling into the lap of luxury. He was raised an Egyptian. He had all the privileges and the riches and everything that he could have. He had that. But what did he do? He forsook all that. Okay? And when he came back, he didn't just come back under the radar here. He came in performing miracles, having plagues cast upon the Egyptian people. He parted the sea, for crying out loud. Okay? These are things he would not have been able to do had he not had faith. Okay? All right? All right, and then finally, and Brother Dixon touched on this too, to me this is one of the greatest examples of faith. And that's Abraham taking that very son that we just talked about, that he and his wife Sarah had waited for their entire lives, and taking him up to slaughter him as a sacrifice. To me, obviously I'm not telling you something you don't already know, but to me that's a foreshadowing of what He was testing Abraham, because God knew that was what he was going to have to do, right? He was going to have to give up his only son for everybody. And so Abraham's faith was being tested there. And it's a beautiful story. We've all read it multiple times, but to me that is one of the strongest examples of faith in God that you can possibly have, because I don't think I know I wouldn't be able to do that. Okay? Yes, sir. Yes. 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 Mm-hmm. Yes. That's right. That's right. I just know that for most people, even if God could speak to us now like He did back then, I would whatever. You tell me, I'm doing it. Whatever. I feel sorry for my son, but that's what's going to happen. Okay, but I mean, it's just what you just said. If back then, when God spoke to these people, He already knew the answer, and Abraham was so smart to know that this could be a test of my faith. I feel like he had to at least think of that. Is that what you think? Yes, and he believed it, and so he didn't know when it was going to happen. Even if it was the second before that knife went into his son, he knew that God was going to provide, right? Or raise him from the dead. That's right. That's right. Brother Murphy. Abraham. Yes. That's right. Yes. That's right. That's right. Right. That's right. Meddling in his affairs. Yeah. I agree. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. He did. Right. That's right. I agree. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. And he's always going to do it, because we started the class off by saying his faith is unwavering. God is unwavering God. He's going to do he's going to keep his promises. It's impossible for him not to. Okay. Thank y'all. So the next thing, and let's see. It's 9:53, so I have 10 minutes. Somebody said 10:03. All right. So a working faith, a Christian faith, can help us to overcome, right? And I'm going to kind of blow through these points because we all know these stories, but just to refresh our memory, how having faith in God can help us overcome. The walls of Jericho fell in 7 days, right? Daniel was able to survive a lion's den. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego survived a fiery furnace. The woman who suffered from 12 years of bleeding was able to overcome this just by having her faith led her to, all I got to do is touch his cloak. Okay, and that took care of. That was after she had spent everything she had trying to get this problem fixed. Okay, 1 John chapter 5 verse 4 reads like this: "For whatever is born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith." You can also go ahead and look at James chapter 1 verse 6, where he's talking about, James is talking about how we should pray to God. And we talked about this in our college class. What's the point of praying to God if you don't have faith that what you're asking for is going to happen or take place, or if God is going to consider what you're asking for? I mean, if you don't have faith in that, why bother doing it? And God doesn't want you to come to Him, like that. It's you can't have doubt and faith at the same time. Okay? All of these acts of faith involve the people doing something. Through their actions, their faith was revealed. And then my final point here is that a working Christian faith, a faith in God, will make us want to work. And we've already talked about this a little bit. And there's so many great examples of people in the Bible, and I'm not going to cover all of them, that it was their faith in God. It made them want to work. It made them want to do something to make a difference. And I don't know if there's one better than Nehemiah. Nehemiah, his faith led him to rebuild the walls around Jericho in just 52 days. I can't build a chicken coop in 3 months. Okay? I tried. I did it, but it's a nice one, but it took me forever. And at the same time, I didn't have to fight anybody while I was there. I had to fight Ashley a little bit, but not a lot. Not with swords and things like that. This is what these guys were facing, okay? And they still got the job done. And it was because of their faith. John chapter 21, verses 3 through 6. And this is the story about, Jesus has been crucified now. He's gone on. And Peter is just reeling in his sorrows. And what does he say he wants to do? He's a fisherman, right? He's like, I'm going to go fishing. Well, he doesn't catch any. They fish all night long, and it's hard work, and they're doing all this, and they don't fish, and then they're told to cast their nets on the other side, and they catch so many fish that they can't pull it all in the boat. It was because of faith, okay? Somebody real quickly turn to Ephesians chapter 6 and verses 5 through 8 and read that to me, please. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 5 through 8. Yeah, I don't think that's in Ephesians, but maybe. Go ahead. Ephesians 6, 5 through 8. Okay, thank you. What really drew my eyes in these verses was that phrase he just said, to not do it with just eye service or men pleasers. Okay, our faith is not supposed to be done, and Ashley kind of touched on this a little earlier. It's supposed to be who we are. Okay, we're supposed to do it not because we're trying to please somebody around us, not because we're trying to do it so that people will look at us and think, wow, that person is just, man, look at his faith. It's all because we want God to look at us and go, wow, look at his faith. That's who you want to please, okay? So I love that verse, and I love that little phrase in there. I think it's a good reminder of what kind of faith we're to have. Proverbs 14, verses 23, I've got it written down here. In all labor there is profit, but idle chatter leads only to poverty. Okay, it's just another reminder. All talk, no action, it just leads nowhere. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 15. Be diligent to present yourself approved to God, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And then finally, 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 3 through 9. This is where I'm just going to read my comments here. It's a very long reading. We're almost out of time. But if you want to check up and read it, it's 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 3 through 9. And Peter is reminding us here of our reward for living faithfully to God, withstanding the trials of life and being in service to God. The stronger our faith is, the stronger and the better we can deal with the trials that we know are coming our way eventually if we're Christians. And finally, I just want to kind of leave you with just a conclusion, if you will, just to kind of summarize what I've tried to say today. And in my words, I say that as Christians, our faith in God must be established and nurtured through study and prayer, and then used in God's kingdom. To simply say that we have faith is not enough. We cannot be Christians in name alone. It is through our works that we show the world our faith, James 2, verse 18. It is our working faith that makes us stand out from the rest of the world. Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 17 that faith of a mustard seed can move mountains. Life will test our faith, and if we hold to God and walk in the light, never letting our faith become idle, we can take refuge in knowing that the Lord is faithful, who will establish you and guard you from the evil one. And that comes from 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verses 3, and I kind of summarized that. But listen, I want to thank y'all so much for having me. I'm glad that Jeff asked me to do it. Every time I get a chance to come in here and talk again, I'll learn more from y'all than I could probably ever teach in here. But thank y'all for having me. Thank you for your comments, and let's go enjoy our worship.